Thank you for tuning into Literary Blend, a publishing podcast. I'm your host, Demi-Michelle Schwartz. There's no perfect recipe for chasing a dream in the publishing industry, but I hope the conversations on this show give you the ingredients you need to bake yours into reality. So let's flip the page and get into this chapter of Literary Blend. Hi friends, welcome back to Literary Blend. Today's chapter is called Revise and Resubmit O'Clock. Oh, what a time. Joining me on the show to chat about this is Grace Demyan. Hi Grace.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Doing well. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So, very important question to kick us off. If Revise and Resubmit O'Clock was an actual time, what time of day do you think that would be?
Midnight.
That's funny. I was actually going to say 11 p.m. because it's
Oh,
like the
really? Okay. Yeah.
anticipation right before midnight. I like midnight too.
I'm like midnight because is it like morning or is it still night? We don't know. It's in that in between space.
Perfect. Cool. So to kick us off, can you please share with everyone a little about yourself and your journey in publishing so far?
Sure. Yeah. I always wish I had some very entertaining or funny story for how I got into publishing, but ultimately I got into publishing the same way a lot of people do, and that's I just kind of fell into it. I was an English major in college who didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated. So naturally, I went to law school. After law school, I started a job with the Defense Department as a compliance investigator. And that really didn't quite meet my creative ambitions. And so I started writing, and I honestly just never stopped. I was spending all of my time learning about publishing and learning about the industry and the ins and outs of it. And it finally got to the point where I was either going to be an editor or an agent. And I set up a ton of informational interviews to see which side I was going to land on. And it became clear right away that agenting was for me. I really liked the idea of answering to myself and depending on myself. Ultimately, my taste in books is going to make or break my career. And I really liked the idea that I could take on any project I wanted, any genre, and any author. So I gravitated toward agenting, and that's what I've been doing since late March.
Fantastic. What a great story. And I know you have a lot of knowledge about revise and resubmits. So let's dive right in. For anyone listening who is like, a revise and resubmit, what in the world is that? Can you give them a quick overview of what this is?
Sure. So a revise and resubmit, also known as an R&R, is when an editor or an agent really likes your project, but there's something holding them back from making an offer of representation or publication. So typically, what happens is they will send back notes saying, "Hey, I really like this, but for X reason, I'm going to reject it. But if you edit this and you do it along these lines, and it'll typically be specific notes, then I, as the agent or editor, will be willing to take a second look at it."
Perfect. So, the first thing I want to chat about is the language when it comes to being offered a revise and resubmit, because sometimes agents will just give very brief general feedback and say, I would be happy to take a second look. And other times the feedback can be more detailed. So, can you give some insight into when an agent is actually offering a revise and resubmit and what that could look like?
So I think a lot of agents try to be helpful, right? They want authors to succeed. So when they're passing on something, if they know kind of what didn't work for them, they will try to include it in their past language. But unless they come out and specifically say, "I'd like to see this again," or "I want to take a second look," it's not an official R&R. That doesn't mean you can't revise and then resubmit to that agent anyway. I'm a big believer in second chances and working on a book and making it better. So if that agent or editor has given you feedback that you resonate with, regardless of whether or not they've asked you to resubmit, the worst you can get is a no if you send it back to them, which you've already gotten. So you might as well send it. If you think your book is better and it's gone through significant changes, I say send it anyway.
Perfect. Great advice. I think sometimes with querying, authors are very nervous to make mistakes and upset agents, which we shouldn't be because you guys are just like the rest of us. You love books, you're just humans. And I think there can be that fear factor of, oh no, I don't want to upset them or do anything wrong. And so it's really great hearing from an agent saying if someone gives you feedback and you revise it based on that feedback, you're free to resubmit, unless they specifically say to not resubmit until 6 months go by or something like that in their guidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always willing to take a second look. And coming at it from an author perspective, I mean, I had an R&R at the agent stage and at the editor stage. So, as an agent, I really do try to keep myself open to revisions because they're magical and really anything can change.
Awesome. So if an author gets to revise and resubmit and they know they want to do the revision, but the feedback the agent gave them might be a little generic or not very detailed, and they want more information about the agent's vision to make sure it aligns with theirs, would you say it's okay for the author to reach out to request more details on the revision that they're suggesting to do before actually doing the revise and resubmit?
Absolutely. So, most of the time, you're going to get feedback via email. It's can be anything from one sentence, like, "Hey, I think the pacing needs to be quicker. I'd like to see it again if you choose to revise," or it can be a 5-page long, single-spaced edit letter. I think you can kind of, as an author, judge how invested the agent is in this revise and resubmit based on how much feedback they're giving you. If they have a lot of thoughts and they have a lot of specific ideas for how they want to revise this book to fit their vision, and they're including that, that's a great sign. I also, if you're only getting maybe one or two sentences, there's nothing wrong ever with responding to the agent and saying, "Hey, I'm very interested in doing this, but I need a little bit more information. When you said the pacing was too quick, what did you mean by that? What places in the book can be improved?" I also believe that if an agent is invested in your book, they should be willing to hop on a call with you at the R&R stage. I know when I've given an R&R as an agent, one of the things I write in my letter is, "Hey, if you have any questions or you want to brainstorm, let's hop on a phone call or a Zoom so that I can, explain where I'm coming from and you can tell me kind of what your vision is and we'll see if they align if you even want to do this R&R."
So, tying into the whole Zoom phone call side of things, I do know some authors who have been asked to set up a call by the agent, and on the call, it turned out to be a revise and resubmit rather than an offer. How common do you think this is where an author goes into a call not knowing if it's going to be an offer or if the agent is going to actually give them an R&R?
Oh, that's rough. So I definitely sympathize with anybody who gets an R&R when they think it's going to be an offer. I don't believe agents should be doing that. I think if they want an R&R and they want to hop on the phone with the author, they should be saying that in their email. Um, However, I personally don't put in my emails like, "Hey, I'm going to offer you representation." I like to get on the phone with the author, make sure we're an editorial fit and a personality fit before I officially offer representation. So, but my intention is never to offer an R&R. It's to see if I'm going to offer rep or not. I believe that it's just unfair to the author to kind of keep them in limbo and they don't know and then drop the ball on them that, "Hey, this is actually just an R&R." But having said that, if it is an R&R and that agent wants to talk to you, that's still a really great thing because you're getting feedback that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And agents are incredibly busy. They have a ton of books that they're reading at any one time. If they are taking the time and the energy to have a conversation with you about your book, they are very invested. So I would see it always as a positive, but I highly encourage any agents out there who are going to give a querying author an R&R and they're going to request it, they need to say that in the email.
Lots of great insight. And I love what you said there about agents are very busy. And if they give you any kind of feedback, whether on a call or in an email, it's really, really important to recognize that that agent took the time. And even if you don't resonate with the feedback or you don't want to do the R&R or apply the feedback or whatever, someone took the time to give you feedback. And that's always something to recognize and be happy about because they didn't have to do that. They could have sent you a form.
They could have, and you're always free to ignore any feedback that an agent gives you if you don't agree with it. So the worst thing that happens is you hop on a call with this agent, they say it's going to be an R&R, this is what I'm thinking, and you go, "All right, well, that's not quite for me." I mean, all you did there was have an opportunity to see if you liked working with that agent, if you guys were going to be on the same page, and it turns out it was a no, then you can just move forward.
Okay, perfect. So, speaking of feedback that may not resonate, when I got an R&R when I queried the first time, I completely resonated with the feedback, loved it. I revised my manuscript accordingly, and even though I didn't sign with that agent, my book is so much better because of it. But there are instances where authors might get feedback that they don't resonate with, and in that instance, how would you suggest for authors to go about that? Would they let the agent know, like, thanks for the R&R, but this doesn't resonate, or would they just let it go? How would you suggest handling that?
So this actually happened to me when I was querying. I was at the very end of querying a YA fantasy novel, and I already had my next book written, and I was getting ready to query that. And an agent came back on the YA fantasy book and said, I want these changes. If you're open to doing it, would you mind resending it to me? And at that point, I agreed with some of her changes, but I wasn't entirely on board with revising that project because I had another one ready to go. So in that case, I just responded back saying, like, thank you so much for reading my project and seeing the potential. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be doing this R&R because I've got another book ready to go. I'd love to query you with that project when it's ready. So I think you can bow out gracefully, or you don't have to say anything because sometimes authors will get feedback and the immediate response is like to get their hackles up right away and say, no, like that's not my book. My book, baby, is perfect. Especially if it's the first time they're getting feedback. If they've worked with critique partners and beta readers, they might have some experience getting feedback and implementing it, but it can be hard sometimes to get feedback and really take it on board and think about it. So you don't have to respond right away to the agent. Take a couple days, take a week to see if anything changes during that time. Stew on it for a while. And then after that, you can tell the agent that you want to go forward or not go forward with the R&R, but you don't have to.
Perfect. I definitely think sitting with feedback in general is really important. And I do that all the time when I get edits from beta readers and critique partners because it's important to let it simmer in your brain. Because one of the favorite things for me with revising is sometimes someone will suggest something and maybe it's not exactly what you need to change in your book, but their suggestion will spark completely new avenues for you to go down when revising. And so allowing feedback to sit in your brain could open a lot of doors for you in terms of finding out what changes you can make that fit your vision and will make the book stronger.
Yeah, and another thing you can do is try the edits. Go into your manuscript, save it as a different Word doc title, go in, start making the edits, see if it fits, see if those changes are actually making the book better. Are they making you excited? Are you exhilarated? Like you're having all of these thoughts and ideas about how to make these changes? That's typically a great sign. But if you start revising and it's going nowhere and you're feeling defeated, that's also a sign that maybe this isn't the right revision plan for you.
Perfect. So say you get an R&R. the agent gives you feedback and you completely resonate with that feedback, you want to do the revision. Would you suggest for authors to notify agents that you got to revise and resubmit so you're withdrawing any outstanding queries or requested materials just so they don't review your old material when you're planning on submitting a new version?
So this is going to vary by your situation. If you are taking on an R&R and you think it's going to make the book better, I do suggest reaching out to agents and withdrawing either your partial or your full. I think that agents want to see your best work. When I had to withdraw some of my fulls to do an R&R, I only got positive responses from agents. So I think you can reach out to them, withdraw it, and then send it to them once it's ready.
So, if the R&R you know you're going to complete will result in new opening pages that you've submitted in query packages, in that case, would you also recommend withdrawing the queries?
Yeah, I would withdraw them just to give your book its best shot.
Fabulous. So, now let's talk about timeline. So, what would you recommend for a realistic timeline between when the agent gives you the R&R and when you submit the revision?
So I don't think there's a specific timeline that you have to return a revision back to the agent. And I've typically heard between 2 and 6 months. But it ultimately depends on how quickly you revise. So for my R&R at the agent stage, it took me 2 months. And it was a complete overhaul of the book. And I'm a very quick reviser. So I actually got it done in a month and then I let it sit for 2 weeks and then I went back to it and made sure it aligned with my vision and that it was hitting all the points that the agent wanted me to hit. But that's on the quicker side. I don't think an agent is going to lose interest in your project just because it's gone beyond 3 to 4 months.
All right, fabulous. So now let's chat about the likelihood that submitting a revision will actually end up as an offer. Can you speak to this?
So there's no hard data on this. I will tell you that I've heard anywhere between 25 to 50% of R&Rs end up in an offer, but that really depends on the agent. For me right now, I've offered 3 R&Rs and signed 1. So I'm sitting at 33% as an agent.
No, that's really insightful. And I wanted to share too that when I did my R&R the first time I queried, it was an interesting situation because the agent that gave me the R&R couldn't read it in time when I got my offer and had the deadline. So she didn't really get a chance to reconsider it, which is kind of sad. But I think the other thing too is if you get an R&R and you resonate with it and you complete the revision and your book is way better, if the agent that initially gave you the R&R passes on it, you still have a book that's in a much better position that you can continue to submit elsewhere. So in that case, I still wouldn't see that as a downside because you ended up with a better product anyway.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a really great thing to mention. If you feel like your book overall is getting better and you're excited to do the edits, there's really no downside to doing it. Even if that initial agent passes, you've then got, like you said, a much stronger novel to put out on submission. And you might get more requests, you might get more fulls, and another agent sees only that version and decides to sign you on it.
Perfect. So this has been such a fun chat. So much great information. To wrap up, are there any final thoughts you would like to share about R&Rs?
When you get feedback, you intuitively know if it meets your vision or not. If you're excited and energetic, then definitely that's a sign that you might want to move forward. But there's also a downside to doing R&Rs that I don't think people talk about enough, and that's if you're revising a book for 2 to 6 months even, that's time that you could have spent working on another project. So you really have to make sure that not only does your vision fit for this R&R, but that this is an agent that you want to work with and this is somebody you like and think that you could have a career working with. Otherwise, you're looking at, opportunity cost, and you could have been working on a project that ultimately might be more marketable or saleable, and that one could get picked up quicker had you not done the R&R.
Fantastic point to end on. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. And this brings us to the plot twist, where I get to ask you a fun question you could have never seen coming. Are you ready?
Yes.
Perfect. So I know you're a Swiftie.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
If you could make R&R stand for something other than revise and resubmit that is very Swiftie coded, what would it be and why?
So, like the acronym R&R,
Yeah.
reputation and revenge,
Oh,
maybe?
good, 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 good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Taylor would be so much better at that than me. But that's what I've got. Yeah,
That's so good.
she's probably gonna, if she ever hears that, she's gonna just vomit. But yeah.
Well, Reputation is my favorite album, so
So Reputation's not my favorite. It's great, don't get me wrong. Um, but my favorite right now, and it changes, of course, based on the day, is the Tortured Poets Department. Um, Even though I didn't think that was going to be my favorite, it has slowly won me over.
perfect. Yeah. Not a huge fan of that one. I like her earlier music better, like her country stuff and 1989 Reputation, but it's really interesting with her because I feel like every album is like a different genre and a different vibe, so I'm really curious to see what TS12 will be.
I am as well. I know it's going to be great though, so I'm not too worried.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Can you please share with everybody where they can connect with you online and check out your manuscript wish list if they're interested in querying you?
Yeah, so right now I'm actually close to queries as I change agencies, but I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram, and then my website is gracedemyan.com. So I'm Grace Demyan everywhere.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, it was great to talk to you about R&Rs.
Absolutely. Listeners, that's a wrap on this chat with Grace, all about Revise and Resubmit. If you enjoyed our conversation, please consider leaving Literary Blend a review and giving it 5 stars to help others just like you discover it. Also, if you have friends in publishing you think would enjoy the show too, please pass it along to them. Thanks for listening, and until we flip to the next chapter, happy reading and writing.